Once again, an apology in advance for the Gen Alpha lingo that's about to cross my lips. Before we begin, thank you very much for Rizful Skibbity Sigma with an Ohio Gyat. Yeah, it's very similar to yesterday's shoutout. Same dude, same guy overpaying for his shoutouts. Again, it's a buck. Take care of yourselves first. I appreciate it. It's very generous. That's a lot of money to drop on simple, goofy shoutouts. I appreciate it, but please, you don't have to do that. I can say silly stuff for a buck, and I have a few one in the queue. Some of which I might have to Google to make sure I'm not saying something that will get me demonetized. But that's how that goes. But thank you very much. Thank you everyone for the support. I have been getting people asking me, where has the toy store life been? It has been a hot minute since we actually did any kind of discussion about the going-ons of working in a toy shop in today's society. So, to be honest with you, it's been pretty mundane lately. I haven't had any weird oddities or crazy stories to tell you, or, most of the day-to-day stuff and the routine stuff we've already discussed on this series. But there is an area that did produce a story recently, and it is something we have not necessarily talked about just yet. And that is going to be the legal side of owning a toy shop. Because just like any other retailers, just like anyone else running a store, there are legalities involved, and there's always the risk of something illegal going on in the store or involving the store that we have to keep aware of. I mean, the easy example with any kind of store is shoplifting. And you know what? There's only so much you can do about that. We have cameras hidden around the store, but, by the time it's out, the footage doesn't really help us do anything except prevent them from coming back the next time. But we have had incidents of shoplifting, thankfully minor ones. Thankfully, very minor ones. So you're seeing this photo because one of the examples we have is we have found empty Star Wars packages near the bathroom door. And we've also found one inside the bathroom as someone grabbed something off of a peg, snuck it into the bathroom, opened it up, pocketed it, threw away the garbage, and then just left. So incidents of shoplifting are going to happen no matter what kind of store you run, no matter how careful you are. So the reason the reason this store is arranged like this is because, frankly, Power of the Force stuff ain't worth much. It's literally a dime a dozen for those toys. So, you know what? They are riskable. I don't really care if one or two gets stolen a year, because I've got literally like 200 of the things that I would love to get rid of. But it is just an area of nostalgia no one really touches, because the toys weren't that good. Every now and then I'll get someone grabbing like one of the super buff Luke Skywalkers, and that's about it. When it comes to the shoplifting side of this, the only thing you can really do is play defensively with how the store is arranged. The way this store is set up, I'm looking down most of the aisles from where I sit in the store, and if I want a closer look at what's going on, I just have to walk up and down my counters. So, to prevent shoplifting, the best thing you can do is leave the least desirable stuff as the stuff in your blind spots. So, from where I'm standing, I'm looking at a set of gondolas in front of me. The backside of those gondolas are mostly things that are easy for me to spot if something happens to them, or they are just kind of like low priority things that, if it goes missing, it's not going to break us or anything. Doesn't mean I want you to come and steal. We still have cameras set up to catch those things. And since this incident with the Star Wars toys, I am a little bit more proactive about going up and down the aisle and watching to see what is going on. But that is essentially the best way to do it. So it's basically the stuff no one really wants needs to go into the spots that you can't see from where you're sitting. That's about the easiest way to curb your shoplifting. And thankfully we've had very, very few incidents of that, because most people who come by genuinely want to be here and they're not going to be jerks about it. Now, there are other areas that we need to discuss for this. For instance, the stuff that happens at the register that we can't do anything about. We have had an incident at the store where someone did use false credit card information, stolen credit card information to actually buy something from us. Quite a big purchase, by the way. So, what happens in that situation is we eat that. If that happens, we're just out money and product. So it basically, like, if it gets reported as, identity theft or whatever, then the money that was given to us, the banks pull back and put back in that person's account. The bank doesn't take the hit on it, we do. It comes out of our account, and we're still out the product as well. Now, because our investment in it is far less than what we're actually charging for it on the rack, not far less, but you get my idea. We're not out as much as the final dollar amount says, but it does still hurt. It does still impact the store, especially when they're taking some choice stuff, and that is stuff that would have likely sold. The only way to really prevent that, and the way we kind of do that these days, is if a purchase amount goes to a certain dollar amount now, we will double check to make sure the credit card you're using is actually yours. I will ask for an ID. I will ask to make sure that it matches up with your card, just as a precaution. Or if you're using cash, that's even better. So when it comes to that, that's the only way you can really prevent that, is just be more aware and proactive. If a big purchase that seems suspicious comes up, double, triple check to make sure everything is on the level. There's only so many ways you can do it, but you're in your right to do it, so that's what goes on. That's on the sales end of stuff. What about when we buy things? Because there is a very likely chance that we could buy something that was stolen, and they came here to get rid of it as quick as possible. So, we kind of have the pawn shop procedure of this little black ledger book that we keep track of all of our purchases in. Whenever someone comes to sell us something, we create a brand new page in the book for them. We'll write down the date, their name, we'll get their name in print and a signature, a loose description of exactly what they have, and then the amount that we have settled on for the purchase. And we'll always take a photo of their ID. Now, that ID we do keep as safe as possible. It's not stored on our store phone. It is essentially transferred and then deleted from the source, so it's kept as private as it can be. But we do keep track of that, so that if someone does come up with something, we find out, something you bought like 2 years ago. The owner is now looking for it. We can be aware of that, and we can go back in our records and find out who did it. Now, people are aware that this is the situation, and people are aware that this is one of the few places in the area that if someone has stolen a toy, this is about the only place you can go to actually unload it. So, we have had proactive warnings from time to time. There was an incident where a woman from up north called, and apparently friends of hers were supposed to be sending her belongings to her new home up north, and never really got around to it, and then discovered that some of the stuff was actually getting sold locally. So among her belongings was apparently a whole collection of vintage Star Wars toys that she wanted to have shipped back to where she now lives, and her friends weren't doing it. So now it became a matter of, okay, now I have to watch for these two women fitting this description who are going to have this many old, vintage Star Wars toys that I got to be on the lookout for. It adds a lot of pressure. It's in the back of your mind, you're going like, this is very possible, but also at the same time, like, kind of not. So it creates a weird paranoia in your system for a while. Like literally weeks where you're just kind of waiting for this situation to happen. Now, it never did. They never did come across my path, and I never found out how that situation resolved. But for the most part, it is something that does happen once in a while. Because we're the only place to unload toys, if someone knows that something is stolen, this is where they're going to come looking for it first. Just like any kind of pawn shop. Now, to our record, everything we've obtained has always been completely on the up and up. There is no way to 100% verify that. Even if someone has photos of it, in their home or anything, I don't know that that's actually photos of their home. So everything has to be taken in good faith. We do protect ourselves. We do make sure that all this is checked off and monitored, but there's always something of an inherent risk, and inevitably, we're going to buy something that was not legally obtained. So, we had this particular TIE fighter in the store for quite a while. It was loose, no figure, and actually it did not have the top or the guns. So, this came in just like anything, the posture of the person was fine. They're completely calm about it. Let us take a picture of their ID and all that. Nothing fishy about the transaction whatsoever, even though we're keeping track of them and like their address, their all this, so we can identify it if it turns up stolen. Even then, some people are kind of not fazed by that. They're just going to get the money and get out, and it doesn't really matter to them. So we ended up buying this TIE fighter, and it sat in the store for probably a little over a year. And then one day, and by this time, like at no point in this year did I ever suspect that this thing had anything fishy about it, until a day when someone came into the store and he looked up at the wall where we had it hanging and goes, "That TIE fighter is missing its top and guns, isn't it?" And at first in my brain, I'm like, yeah, like that's a really observant customer. Yeah, good job. That's exactly what's missing. That's what's wrong with it. And he states, yeah, because that's the one the friend of mine stole from me. Oh no. This this is a panic alarm moment, by the way. When this goes on, like, you immediately start freaking out. Like, this is not happening. This is not happening. Please tell me I'm not going to have police cars showing up to figure out what is going on here. Thankfully, the guy was super cool about it. He didn't hold any, he didn't hold anything against us. He didn't really want it anymore anyway, so we didn't have to give it back. Whatever happened, he usually understands that it was him and his friend, and whatever that was that dispute between them. So didn't take it out on us, didn't want it back. In fact, when we did find someone who had bought it, he was actually nice enough to send along the bag of the missing parts, so the guy who bought it could have a complete TIE fighter. So that was a happy ending. That worked out fairly well for everyone, including the thief, ironically enough. So, I picked this topic, and we're going through this whole thing specifically so I can get to this story that just happened a couple weeks ago, okay? So, we do not deal in loose cards. It's a paranoia that the owner has inherited from the guy who taught him how to run the store. And that just comes from the idea of like, well, we don't want customers to think that our package material, that all of our sealed product has been tampered with. They don't want, if you sell loose cards, they're going to think you're like weighing packs and resealing them and keeping all the good stuff for yourselves to sell. I've never encountered anyone in any of these stores I've been coming to who has ever thought that. Loose cards are just a common thing to find in a card store these days. No one ever thinks of like the store is actually ruining their own, because it's such a dumb idea. Why would we risk? Why would we risk, the confidence people have in our sealed product? Like we don't have that. Like that would ruin our business. But that is the paranoia, so I can't do anything about that. Owner doesn't want to sell loose cards. Simple as that. But these came into us a couple weeks ago, and typically like I said, we don't buy these. However, the guy who came in was very pushy about it, and just giving me the story about he's got to pay off his cell phone bill. He knows that he is like taking a loss on these because he said they're like $300 worth of cards. Keep in mind, the photo I'm showing you right now is only a handful for a visual example. The actual like cards, like it's a much thicker stack than this. And he knows in his head, like this is worth 300, but I'm just trying to pay my phone bill. I'll take 40 for it. Okay, so if we were to take cards like this, 40 is a far, far lower offer than we would actually make. So this is already a little bit of a red flag. His insistence is also a red flag because as he's like talking about these cards, he's very insistent. I'm telling him we do not buy individual loose cards, but he will not take no for an answer. He's still being upbeat about it. He's not being aggressive, but he is still being very, very pushy about how much they're worth and like, you could make money off these. You need to buy these off me. We've had this incident in the store before where someone came in to try and sell us some old D&D books. And he was just very, very pushy about it. And originally, like on the phone, he was like, okay, I want 75 for these old books. And I tell him, well, we don't buy old D&D books, but bring them in just so we can take a look. They're ratty. There's damaged pages. There's one with a ripped out page. There's water damage on the cover of one of them. And he's still like, 75? I'm like, I can get these from a distributor for less than 75. They'll be in perfect condition. And then he just goes lower and lower and lower and lower, trying to find the number I'm going to say yes at, and I'm not giving him a yes. When he finally realizes I'm not going to give him a yes, he turns to the other customers in the store and goes as low as $20. He is just begging someone to buy these for any amount of money. Now, when someone comes in here, I understand the vibe that they're giving off when they are selling something. I can feel it when they are trying to just make a little bit of extra money. I can tell when they're in a bad situation and they really don't want to let go of what they got, or even the ones who are happy to get rid of it because, oh my God, this has just been taking up space in my closet for so long. But there is that one that tells me, whatever you're saying, you aren't using the money for what you claim you're using it for. There is something illicit involved here. There is an addiction here you're trying to feed, and I understand why you're not flat out admitting it, but I can tell by how pushy you are and how low you're willing to go, that's what's going on here. I'm not going to flat out say it, you know what I'm talking about. So, I can tell this guy with the Yu-Gi-Oh cards isn't trying to pay a phone bill. Now, I don't want to repeat that super uncomfortable D&D situation, so I'm going to just tell him, okay, I'll give you the $40 you want. Here, we'll write you up. Have a nice day. He doesn't have an ID on him, by the way. We have to take a photo of him instead. Another little red flag. But we take the cards in, and I'm telling this whole story to the owner so he understands what I just did with his money. And as I'm telling this story, I add on the part about, this feels like a really weird situation. This kind of feels like he was just trying to rush it to me somehow. So instead of putting these out for sale right away, I think I'm just going to keep them in the back and sit on them for a while, just in case someone turns up asking for stolen Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Because the way he went about this, it felt like these could be hot. And keep in mind, this is like a day later, okay? So 24 hours has passed. As I am telling the owner about this plan to keep a hold of these cards long enough to make sure that they aren't stolen, a police car pulls up to the front of the store. I'm not kidding. This was the timing. A police car pulls up to the front of the store, gets out. The man walks in, full regalia, flak jacket, shades on. This guy was still on duty because his radio was still going on. This was an active police officer showing up right on time. And, we give him the usual greeting. Hello, welcome to the store. Like, how can we help you? And he goes, hi. Do you sell Yu-Gi-Oh here? Yes? Cool, I'm trying to put together a Toon deck. Do you have any sets that have Toon cards in them? Oh! Oh! We can look! Give us a second to Google it. He gets a few packs, he leaves. And me and the owner just kind of stare at each other. Did that just happen? Was that the timing the universe decided on? It blew my mind. Like, because it's not enough that a cop pulled up when I asked about it. It's the fact he came in for Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, that really did feel like he was one breath away from going, we got a report. So, I wanted to tell you about the legality part of the toy store just so I could get to that story, because it's one of the weirdest things that's happened so far. And when else is that timing ever going to happen? So I gotta share it with you guys. So if you made it through the whole video to hear that story, I deeply appreciate it. I hope everyone enjoyed the return of the Toy Store life. Don't know how regular it'll be because, like I said, been kind of mundane, but, you know, I might figure out something to talk about. But, as usual, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.